we're going to go back in time and look at what the sky looked like in the days of the Magi. And it's taken a little bit of searching to find out exactly what days we think that is, but I'll get to that in just a few minutes. There are two main hypotheses. If you Google the Star of Bethlehem, you'll find there's two major camps. One of them is it's a miracle camp, and unfortunately, a lot of men that I highly regard as preachers or are good Bible students kind of jump to this conclusion. And it's a real easy conclusion to jump to. Brad and I was kind of kid about punting to the mystery. And sometimes that is the right answer. Sometimes God hasn't given us enough information, and that we have to just wait maybe till we get to heaven, and then we can ask him, but you're not going to find it here. I don't believe this is the case, and here's why I don't think the miracle answer is good. Now, there was a miracle in the virgin birth of Mary. That was foretold that would be so, and it is also necessary for Jesus to be who he is. So Jesus, I love this. I got this from Brad too. He steals so much of my stuff. I'm going to take his. So Jesus was born of a woman. He's 100% flesh. But he was also, his father was God. So he's 100% God. And I know that adds up to 200%. We can't do that, but he can. So that's who Jesus is. In order for that to happen, it had to be a virgin birth. But I challenge you to think now about the story Brad just read in Matthew, and then think of all that we know about Jesus in his youth, the escaping to Egypt, the returning, his going to the temple and getting lost like a 12-year-old, and then his entire youth was absolutely normal. He spent 9 months in the womb just like we all did. He spent his youth as an infant just like we did. There was no fast forwarding of anything. I love that the Marvel comic books, when a superhero comes up and he's born, they speed him right through to about 15 or 20, right? That always happens, but not in our Lord's case. And the reason, I think, is very clear. Jesus stands before God as our propitiation. He's our advocate in the court of heaven. And because he actually has every human experience you have. He has disappointment, he has love, he has pain, he has suffering. He has everything that we have. And that's what makes him the 100% human part. And so my argument is, when you punt to the miracles, it doesn't appear to me that God used any miracles. I mean, the soldiers come to kill the children of Bethlehem, and Joseph gets in a dream, and they escape in the middle of the night, and they run, walk, or ride to Egypt. That's not a miracle. God could have snapped his fingers and every one of those soldiers dropped dead like he did for Hezekiah with the Assyrian army. That did not happen. Jesus could have, entered the world as an adult male. He could have shown up at his baptism just fully grown and started the whole story there. That didn't happen. He spent all this time as a youth with no miracles, no protection. I'm absolutely certain the Holy Spirit and the angels were watching over him, but we don't see an example in the New Testament of Jesus being treated special with miracles throughout his birth. So I took the point that that's not true. The other major hypothesis is a conjunction, which a conjunction is the astronomy word for when two stars come together and are so close you can barely tell them apart, or you can't tell them apart. And this happens between Saturn and Jupiter. Now, Saturn and Jupiter are gas giants, so they're the furthest ones out we can see with the naked eye. Jupiter runs about 600 million miles away from us. Mars and Venus are only about 40 million miles away. So this thing's really far away, and Saturn's even further. So the conjunction between those two, they would be two slow-moving giants. But even as slow-moving as they are, the conjunction wouldn't last very long. It would last maybe a couple of days. And then it's gone. And the Star of Bethlehem, as Brad read, it appears in the east. The Magi go to Jerusalem, and they still see it. They still see it. And I'm going to argue that it's at least 6 months travel time to get to to get to Jerusalem, and the star's still there. And there's only a couple objects in the natural sky that would fit that. So my hypothesis is this is a natural sky event, and we now have the technology to see if we can find it. Now, I do not have the prophecies of the Magi. The Magi are operating under prophecies, but here's what I do think. The Magi are followers of Daniel. And the reason I think that is because the word Magi comes from a Persian word. And they say they're from the east, and they worship Jesus. When they find him, they worship him. And so if you notice from the verse I just read, it's a true prophecy when the prophecy states that Jesus came in the flesh. That statement from 1 John is almost written for the Magi. That they're the ones that come and state he is born in the flesh. He's born. So I think it's an announcement that the Magi are operating on a God-given prophecy. There's another reason to believe that. Daniel has two prophecies in the book of Daniel. The second chapter, we know it as the Four Kingdoms prophecy. And if you remember that story, I'll tell it really quickly. Remember that story? Nebuchadnezzar has a really bad dream, scares him to death. He calls the Magi, says, what's going on? They say, we don't know. He says, I'm going to kill you all. Now I'm moving really quick through this story. They go running to Daniel because they know Daniel talks to his God. And they beg Daniel to intercede on their behalf because the Magi's, every one of them, he ordered the entire Magi group in Babylon. Now, just so you know who Magi are, that term means powerful one. And it's properly translated wise men. And this would have been the court counselors of Nebuchadnezzar in any Persian or later the Medes. So these are the educated men that the king keeps around him so that he doesn't make really dumb mistakes. And when they couldn't answer his dream, he was going to kill them all. And so Daniel reads the dream, but at the end of it, he prophesies about Jesus. A kingdom will come that will have no end. So that's the first time. And he just put it in a time frame because we know what those kingdoms are. They're the Mede Empire, the Greek Empire, and the Roman Empire. And we're in the time of the Roman Empire when Christ comes. So that's exactly when Daniel said there would be a king who would come, that his kingdom would have no end. That's a common term for Christ's kingdom. Okay, then there's the 9th chapter one. That's the 70 weeks prophecy. Brad read it a couple weeks ago. It basically uses the 70 weeks as 490 days, and those are years. So he prophesies Christ is coming in 490 years. And for all I know, that prophecy is extremely accurate because we don't know exactly when he gave that prophecy, but Christ comes around 490, 500 years later. So Daniel had those two prophecies about when Christ comes. So now there's another prophecy that he actually came. And guess who is the angel that walks up to Daniel and he's praying in the 9th chapter? It's Gabriel. Who's the angel who went to Mary? Gabriel. Now these aren't coincidences. God uses his angels certain ways. Michael seems to fight fights, and Gabriel seems to announce the coming of Jesus. And so I think there's plenty of reason to believe the Magi are an extension of a school that Daniel started 500 years ago. And they've been watching the sky for an event they haven't seen. Here's another thing. They don't show up at the wrong time. They show up at the right time. So they are the Magi who have the accurate prophecy. They show up and Jesus is a baby. All right. So now I'm going to go on. I know my slides, that one works okay, but we're going to get into some that don't. First thing I want to do is what bothered me for years and why I wouldn't do this study. And if you know me, you know I'm a bit of a nerd. I love challenges. I like to solve puzzles that are very hard. And this was a great puzzle, but two things kept me from doing it. One is we didn't have the prophecy, and I didn't want to conjecture what God would have said. I felt like that was, being a little too bold. That's out of my element. And the second one was that I wasn't too sure that where does stargazing end and the astrology begin. And so it took me a while to get comfortable with that. The Bible says astrology is making the stars into your idols, listening to them about your life. So we're not going to do that. In Job, when he's arguing with when God corrects Job after his discussion, he says, who made the bear and Orion and Pleiades and the chambers of the south? God is using constellations. Those are his constellations. He named them and he can use them. There's other places, without me reading it all, there's other places where it says he knows every star by its name and none are missing. So the stars are not for us to avoid. I think astrology has kind of ruined it for us, But the stars are signs from us. They will be signs. Jesus even said that you would know his second coming because it will be shown in the moon, the sun, and the stars. Jesus said that. So looking at these for signs from God is exactly what we are going to do, and that's what I think is okay. So next slide, I'm going to walk you through a little stargazing. I own my own telescope. I have an 8-inch Cassegrain that you can light it up and you'll track the stars across the sky. You can put a camera on it, record them. I haven't done it in years because there's so much light pollution, I can't see anything I want to see. In the olden days, when I lived a little further out of town, I could see galaxies, far away galaxies, but it's not as interesting. But anybody that does stargazing, you have to learn a few basic rules. Otherwise, you're going to be up there and you're not going to be able to find anything you're looking for. Rule number 1, all the stars, when we say star today, we mean the ones that are like our sun. They're like a fission, plasma ball that produces an enormous amount of light. So much light, if you look at it, it'll burn your retina. That's a star. In the Magi's day, any light in the sky was a star because they didn't know about planets yet. So they called those wandering stars. So there are stars, and then there are wandering stars. The word planet just means wanderer. And so why they're called wanderers is because you look up at the sky and you will see like the Big Dipper, or you'll see Capricorn, and then you'll see Saturn in it. And you look up tomorrow and Saturn will be a little further away. Now Saturn and Jupiter move pretty slowly, but Venus moves this much every night. And Mercury even more than that. And so you watch, and you have to watch it several times. Now here's the 2 things that you cannot count as motion. The fact that stars rise over here and set over here. That's us turning, not the stars. That's not the stars moving, that's the Earth rotating. The other one you can't count as motion is I'll look straight overhead at midnight and I see Aries. And then in January, I look straight overhead and I see Capricorn. Well, what that is Earth moving through its orbit. So the dark side of Earth over here is pointing at that group of stars. The next month we're here, the next month we're here. And that's where the zodiac comes from. They are the constellations that are at the top of the sky all year round. There's 12 of them because there's 12 months. All right, looking at them moving, or looking at the Earth rotating, is not the movement of the stars. That's the movement of the Earth. And so that's the first thing we have to learn. And anybody doing stargazing learns to ignore the rotation of the Earth if you're wanting to see what Jupiter is doing. There's 5 naked eye planets. That's what they call them, naked eye planets. Mercury, it's Mercury, Venus, starting closest to the sun. Mercury, Venus, of course, Earth, then Mars, Jupiter, and Saturn. What we can't see is Neptune, Uranus, or Pluto. And Pluto's been downgraded anyway. But we can see those other 5, and people have been able to see them throughout centuries. They would be well known to the Magi. The movement that you're looking for is you want to see if a star moves against the fixed stars. So while let's say Leo might be right here, tomorrow it's going to be right here. It's just off a little bit. But what I'm going to do is look at a star in Leo, and I'm going to see if that other star has gotten closer or further from it. And if it's moving, it's either a planet or a comet or something like that. It's some moving object. This is just basic stargazing 101. And the reason why I have to explain this is because that's what people misunderstand when they start looking at the final statements in Matthew when the Magi see the star over Bethlehem and it comes to a stop. The Magi are professional stargazers. They've looked at stars more than I have. So they know what over Bethlehem means and comes to a stop mean, and I'm going to show you. They don't, by the way, I don't think they understand solar systems.
I have switched to dubbing because my microphone had some issues. We're going to look at slide 4, the ecliptic. This is the path of the sun, the moon, and the planets. I'm showing this picture. This is Starry Night, the software. And as I've highlighted here, I've picked Christmas Day 2023, which is a week from now. I'm looking into the future with this software. It is 5:09 p.m. The sun sets at 5:36, so you can see the sun is still up. That's why you see it over in the right-hand corner. The green line arcing across the sky is the ecliptic. It is where all these planets, the sun and the moon are, because that's the shape of our solar system. The software bends the Earth, the ground you see that has the compass rose on it, it bends that upwardly as I zoom back. So that's why it's bent a little bit. You're seeing Jupiter over the south-southeast, and you're seeing Saturn over directly over the south. And now I'm going to look 4 hours from now in the future. Now we have Starry Night showing us 4 hours later, so this is about 9 p.m. And what you're seeing now is Jupiter has now moved directly over the south. So I'm trying to just show you how things move across the sky. It shows the moon has risen. You notice it's just above the ecliptic. When I say things follow the ecliptic, they can be a little above it or a little below it, depending on where they are in their orbits. But this is just another picture of the same night, Christmas night this year. And the objects will move about 15 degrees per hour. So it takes them about 12 hours to go across the sky. They rise in the east, set in the west. And the Magi would be familiar with all these patterns, even though they don't understand how the Earth moves or the solar system. Okay, just a few more slides. Is the technology trustworthy? Well, yes, this is the exact same math, Kepler's 3 laws of planetary motion, that NASA uses to launch probes that hit outer planets, 20 years later. So this is very precise software, and it will give us exactly where the planets are and all the information we need for the time, even back to the 1, 2, 3, 4 BC time frame that we're looking at. The next thing we need to know is, we don't have the prophecy of the Magi. Now, this is an issue, but I think it's mitigated by the fact we do have Revelation 12. Revelation 12, and I have it quoted here, says, Revelation 12, 1 and 2, a great sign appeared in heaven, a woman clothed with the sun, with the moon at her feet, and her head a crown of 12 stars. Now, this is very solar system centric. Yeah, they're talking about things that we know in the solar system. So I think this particular quote was intended for us, and it is in the middle of a large group of metaphorical symbols, but this doesn't look that metaphorical. If you look to the right, you'll see artist illustration of Virgo, but inside there you'll see the blue lines. The blue lines are the lines between the stars. So this is what, if you know the stars, you'd imagine these lines or you draw them on a piece of paper. The area of the body is the rectangle that I have the word, the area of the body here. And then her feet, you can see. So this is a stick figure. It's a body with 2 arms and 2 legs. Very obvious human body. And we can identify where the body is and where the feet are very clearly. So I think that's very helpful. When was Christ born? Well, it turns out that Josephus's book, The Antiquity of the Jews, was mistranslated to say 4 BC. And this gentleman, Ernst Martin, in his book, The Star That Astonished the World, came back and showed that he went and looked at earlier manuscripts, and it says 1 BC. Also, all the early church fathers, Irenaeus, Tertullian, Africanus, Hippolytus, Origen, Eusebius, Clement of Alexandria, and on, they all said Christ was born in 2 BC, and they were much closer to that date. So we're going to look in that time frame, not the 765 BC that other people have looked at for years. All right, this is slide 7 now, and this is a very busy slide. I apologize, but I needed to get all this information and hopefully on one page so we can look at it. This is a careful reading of Matthew, and if we go down the verses, it says, now after Jesus was born in Bethlehem of Judea in the days of Herod. So that's how we know we have to find Herod alive still. And we know Herod dies not long after this because Jesus returns back from Egypt when he's told, when his father's told that the Herod has died. And he says, behold, wise men from the east came. It says, wise men from the east. I imply these to be the followers of the Magi that descended or are trained through a school that Daniel helped set up, because they have a lot of prophecy that certainly comes from God because of how accurate it is. And they ask, this is a real key clue, they ask, where is he who has been born King of the Jews? Now, I say that's key because they don't know where he is. And this is a big mistake many people make. They think the Star of Bethlehem points to the house where Jesus is. And I don't think that's an accurate understanding. I think the star The star and all these stars point to things that happened in time, and we're going to talk about those things. When they get to Jerusalem, they have to say, where is he? Just like you and I would have to. So where do they go? They go to the court of the current king, because they think the new king is being born. He's probably heralded as the great child of this king. They have no idea, so they go there. And he says, for we saw the star when it rose in the east. And your translation may say we saw the star in the east, but that word Anatole that is translated there actually implies action, rising in the east. So I'm going to say it's rising in the east. And when they hear this, when Herod and the Jews hear this, they're troubled with all Jerusalem. Now they're troubled because A, they didn't see the star, and B, they probably don't like the idea there's a new king. Now understand, Herod was a horrible king, but the Romans liked him and he kept peace. So maybe all of Jerusalem was worried because of that. And so we know that Herod and the Jews looked at the same sky and did not see it. That doesn't mean that the star was special. What that means is that somebody can look at the same star you're looking at and they don't see anything unique, and you're seeing something because you have prophecy that tells you what the star is doing now and what it's going to do. So I think the Magi had a lot more information, which is why they knew this star existed. Other people would look at the same star and not think anything of it. Brad made this lesson one time. Seekers can see the truth in God's way, and atheists can look at the exact same information and see nothing. And I think that's exactly what's happened here with Herod and the Jews in Jerusalem. And then he assembles all the chief priests and the scribes and the people, and they look and they find out he was born in Bethlehem using the Micah prophecy. So that's important. He's born in Bethlehem. And then one of the other things we notice is the Magi come all the way from Babylon to Jerusalem, which is 900 miles, many months travel time. And the star is still up, because when they leave Herod's court, they go out and they see the star again. So the star endures. So that's an important point, because many stars do not endure that long, especially planets. They're gone. They come and they're gone by then. And then Herod summons him back secretly because he's plotting to kill the baby Jesus, because he's an evil man. He doesn't want to lose his throne. He's jealous. And then it says, when they left, it rose and went before them, and then it came to rest over the place where he was. And just so you know, all stars rise in the east, and so if it's over Bethlehem, which is where they're told he is, that's directly south, and it's only 5 miles south. So there's an important message here. They could have walked the 5 miles from Jerusalem to Bethlehem in an afternoon, but they don't. They stop, they camp out, and they look back at the stars. And I think that's because they have more prophecy that has to be fulfilled. And that's what we're going to look at, is all this prophecy. So this star has to rise in the east over Babylon, and then it has to show up in Jerusalem and appear to the south of Jerusalem, and then it has to stop while it's over the city of Bethlehem. So slide 8's next, and what we're going to see is the images that come up from the horizon. First thing we're going to see is September 11th, 3 BC, at 2:25 a.m. from Babylon. And what you're going to see is Leo, the lion, rising up with Regulus. Regulus is the heart star. It's the star that's right where you see the sign Jupiter on the left-hand picture. And Jupiter is in conjunction with Regulus. Not sure whether that's part of the symbology or not, but it's definitely in the heart of the lion. And Jupiter is known as the king planet. It is the largest planet in our solar system by far. And it's so large we can see it, and it's even visible at dusk. It's almost as bright as Venus. Venus is the brightest star in the sky. Jupiter is the second brightest. So this is a pretty significant star. It'd be pretty bright. And it rises in Leo, the lion. And then the next thing that rises is Virgo, the virgin. And that's the middle picture where you see the stick figure of a person. I've already talked about that stick figure, and you can see where the sun is. It's right in the middle of the body. That yellow spot is the sun. Now I have the daylight turned off, so you see the sun, but you don't see the daylight. The picture to the right, the one all the way to the right, is when daylight turned back on. And so that's what you would see, only the blue lines wouldn't be there, nor would the image be there. But the Magi would have the ability to hold up a reference, maybe something carved out of a piece of wood, and they would be able to locate these positions and tell that that sun is right out in her body. And you can't see it in the daylight one, but that's a moon rising. And the reason why you can't see it, it's barely visible in the dark one. And the reason why is it's a new moon, it's a black moon, indicating it's the first day of the Jewish month. And it happens to be the first day of the Jewish month of the Jewish New Year. But that's September 11 to us. Now, maybe a little something about calendars. We're in the Gregorian calendar system right now, made in about the 1500s by Pope Gregory, and it corrected a mistake with the Julian calendar. The Julian calendar is what most people think we're in. That is the one that has the days that we know, January, February, March. Each day has 30 or 31 days except February. And then leap year every 4 years. That was the Julian calendar. The Gregorian calendar adds in a leap year every 100 years when the number is divisible by 100. And it corrects what they saw about the 15th century, that they were having a hard time pinning the equinox, equal day, equal night, that happens in the springtime, which is very important, especially to the Pope, because that's how they calculate Easter. And so Pope Gregory came up with a math fix, and we changed over to it. In the U.S., I think we changed over in the 1700s, but so we're on the Gregorian calendar. None of the Jews would have used either of those calendars. They used the Jewish calendar, but we now have software and people that can convert you back and forth. So that's what these pictures are, and we're going to go to the movie next. Okay, here goes the animation of Starry Night. This is from Babylon, looking to the east, September 11th, 2:45 a.m. local time, 900 times normal speed. And you can see I'm looking almost due east. And you saw the lion, Leo, rise with Regulus and Jupiter in conjunction. And there's the Virgin Virgo rising with the sun right at her waist, in her, clothing her. And there's the moon rising, a new moon. And this symbol, this particular collection of the sun and the moon at her feet does not happen but about every 22 years. And so it would not happen again in this window of Christ's birth. This would be not totally rare, but you add Regulus rising with Leo, and the combination of those two events does not happen very regularly. It's probably, it has not happened in the time of Daniel to Jesus, this combination of events. So it makes it fairly unique, but there's a lot more to see. All right, this next image is a picture of Leo with the red lines you see in dates in there. It's too small to see the dates, but the red line, that is retrograde motion. And what that means is that Jupiter appears to be going from its heart down to the paw, back to the back foot, and then it turns around and goes the other way, and it goes back up to the forefoot, and then or arm, and then it returns back. Does a little loop there. And the reason it does that is it's an illusion. It's an optical illusion because you're on a moving planet, Earth, and Earth is actually passing Jupiter at this moment. It's not far different from if you were in your car and your parents were driving fast enough to pass the car to your right. You would look over at it and it looks like it's backing up. The car's not backing up. You're both going down the highway. You're just going a little bit faster, so it looks like it's backing up to you. That's exactly what's happening here with Jupiter. So that's the retrograde motion. And when it does this, Jupiter back up, goes all the way back above Regulus, and goes all the way back down to Regulus again, and goes all the way back down, and then exits the loop. And so we're going to see that video here. All right, again, we're going to go into animation, and you're going to see Jupiter slide down. Now, what I've done, I've frozen it right on Regulus, so you're seeing Jupiter move in reference to that star Regulus. It keeps dropping down, and somewhere around the middle of November, it turns around again. Now, these are taking months, as you can tell. It's gone from September to November. It's now reverse course, and Jupiter looks like it's going backwards. The Magi would be able to see this, but everything you're seeing would be taking them days and months to watch. But they would plot these things. They would draw them out, and so, over a long period of time, it would look just like this to them. They wouldn't have the lion's image there, but they would have the stars. And it just passed Regulus for the third time. I'm not sure there's any significance there. And it loops out and leaves the loop. Jupiter returns to its retrograde where it started on around the middle of June in 2 BC. It's now 2 BC because we've gone over from September to June. And I brought the still image of the lion back with the retrograde motion so you can look at it just for a second. We're going to move on to the next slide. But first I want to set this next picture up because this now makes me move to June. And the reason why is I saw a star go flashing by just as Jupiter was leaving. And once again, I don't have the prophecies, but that star was Venus, and it was very bright. It went by. It looked like it went into conjunction with Jupiter, so I searched for that date. Okay, so the next slide, slide 12. What was significant about that retrograde is it lasts exactly 9 months. And that made me think that maybe that 9 months is significant. And so we look and we find this Jupiter-Venus conjunction. We saw Venus fly by Jupiter. If you look at that video, if you back it up and look again, you'll see Venus flying right by just as Jupiter exits that loop. And this happens on the evening of June 17th, 2 BC. It occurs just about 7 p.m. sundown. You would be able to see these two stars with the sun up for a period of time, just like you can Venus. And then you'd see it set at 9:30. And so it's only visible for 2 hours, and 2 hours in the whole year. That's the whole time it's visible. So it's just a moment in time. And so I'm just kind of trying to think of what could the prophecy look like. And I came up with this, although I don't want to offend anybody because this is not God's words, these are mine. But what would the prophecy say, I think? It could be as simple as this. When his star enters the heart of the lion and circumcises the heart that's going around it, the King of the Jews has come. And come would be because inception is the beginning of life to both the Jews and to us, at least us Christians. And then when the King Star has become the brightest star in the sky, the King of the Jews is born. Praise God, praise Him, rejoice, the kingdom shall have no end. Something like that. So that could be as simple as this message is, and that would be met by all these star conditions we've seen. So now we're going to look at what that conjunction looks like on June 17th. I'm going to back up and start on June 16th so you can see it does not look the same on June 16th. Okay, this is Starry Night going into motion. You can see Jupiter and Venus, they're not next to each other on June 16th. This is looking to the west, which is where Jerusalem would be. So now you're looking the other direction to the west and you see Jupiter and Venus. They're not in conjunction on the 16th. Nothing extraordinary about that. Their lights not being added together. But one day later, on the 17th of June, starting at sunset around 7:30 or 7 p.m., and then going until about 9:30, you can see those two stars are right next to each other. And that would join them together, and they would be the brightest star in the sky. Brightest star maybe these Magi had ever seen. Certainly brightest star this year. So on June 17th, 2 BC, looking west from Babylon, 7 p.m., they're in conjunction, and they stay in conjunction until they sunset. An amazing picture, maybe symbolic.
All right, looking at the symbolism here, we have Leo, the lion, rising in the east on September 11th, with Jupiter rising in its heart. And that is, I think, the sign because it is his sign. It's his star. And that's followed by Virgo rising with the moon at her feet and clothed in the sun, which is directly out of Revelation. Those two together probably symbolize the Annunciation. And the reason I think that is because the retrograde motion takes 9 months. And that's the exact time it would take to carry a baby. And then at the end of those 9 months, you have this spectacular symbol of Venus and Jupiter in convergence. By the way, there's no Bible verse that requires there to be the brightest star in the sky. This just happens to be it. I have no idea where that came from, other than just it's in songs that we sing. But it appears that the Venus planet, which is, we know it as the mother planet, but the Magi would have known it in Persian terms, and it was called the Divine Mother in their language. So it's still a female. I mean, Venus is a bright planet, the brightest star in the sky, and it has always been associated with the beauty of the female. And so the idea that the Venus planet is in conjunction with the Jupiter planet, and then they separate the next day, my assumption is that's a very symbolic picture of the mother and the child being together and then coming apart, and could very easily be the birth of Christ. Now, we know the Magi had a sign that tells them Christ is born, because when they get to Jerusalem, they don't ask if the child is born. They say the child is born, and they want to know where he is. So the Magi are absolutely certain. Matter of fact, they've traveled 900 miles based on this certainty that the Christ child has been born. And they arrive, and they just want to know where he is. Would it be a good time to assume the shepherds in the fields were told by angels? In this next slide, slide 16, we can see that Babylon and Jerusalem are about 700 miles apart, Jerusalem being due west of Babylon. The Magi would have had to follow this pathway, this red line, because that's the Fertile Crescent. That's the location of the water. And if you try to go straight across, it's a desert, and no one would try to do that. So the pathway they have to take is about 900 miles, and probably noteworthy to suggest that the Magi are not traveling as a small group of 3 men on camels like we see in our postcards. More than likely, this is a large caravan. It would be all the Magi that wanted to go on this trip. Eastern Christian tradition says it was at least 14. But I would assume they would also have security. These are wealthy men from the court of Persia. These are his counselors. They would have had a pretty significant amount of wealth, and they would have taken their security with them, maybe their wives and children, because they're going to be gone a year round trip. And so this would take, in a caravan like that, would take probably 6 months to get there, 5 to 6 months. Even though the distance could be traveled in like 3 months if you were moving quickly. There's no reason to believe they would do that. And that would have them showing up, if they left in June, that would have them showing up maybe early to middle December.
All right, we're going to look at the last animation, but before we do so, I just want to, collect some thoughts here. The Magi are pros at this. They're professional stargazers. They know a star can stop. They saw it when it was in Leo, stop in reverse. So they know it can do that, but it has to do it at the right time. And they also now know the baby's born in Bethlehem. They just learned that from Herod. And they know Bethlehem is only 5 miles away. I mean, from Jerusalem to Bethlehem, 5 miles, you can walk it in a brisk morning. It's not that far of a trip. But what we find out is they don't go straight there. They see the star, and they see it rising over Bethlehem, and then they see it stop, and they rejoice. So they had to stay overnight and view it. So I think they went part way in camp. They leave Jerusalem. They're done with Herod, and now they're going to camp. And they're looking for the last 2 signs. I think their prophecy requires these 2 more signs to occur. Otherwise, they could have just walked straight there. What you do is you just go to the well at Bethlehem and say, hey, where's the baby? And every woman there would know that Mary had a baby. And after all the big ruckus the shepherds probably had after talking to an angel and going and seeing the baby, but everybody in Bethlehem knew that this baby existed. So it wouldn't have been hard to find him at this point, but that's not what they do. They stop, they camp out, and they're looking for these signs. And I think they're looking for them because they have more signs in their prophecy. All right, so by this time, Jupiter has now moved out of Leo, and it's in Virgo, a of all things, and it's approaching the star Parima, which is near the heart of Virgo. So it's left the heart of Leo and it's got near the heart of Virgo. And I don't know if that has anything to do with it, but it's pretty amazing that that's where it is. And so we're going to see those blue lines with those stars on it in this next.
Okay, in this picture of the southern sky from Bethlehem, you can see Jupiter directly over the south, which is where Bethlehem would be. And in Matthew 2:9, it says when it rose, like they saw it back in Babylon, now it is before them. Well, they're standing looking to the south, and sure enough, it is before them. As an example, if he had been born in some city to the north, it would never be before them. So this could be part of the prophecy, and it would be met by this image that we're looking at right here.
All right, this is the simulation. You can see those two stars that are part of Virgo. You can see Jupiter heading towards Palmar and then stops and reverses course. So it stops for a couple days. It's about 5 days that it would appear to be at a complete stop. Zooming in, we're going to watch that again. This time you'll be able to see the moons of Jupiter whipping around it. And you see it dropping dates. And it's dropping dates. That's November. That's the 9th of December. 19th. That's the wind picture I just showed. And here it comes to a stop. And it stops between about the 24th to the 29th. It's hard. I'm zoomed in so much I can see it. But I think the Magi would have thought it stopped anywhere from 23, 24, 25, all the way up to 29. I don't think December 25th meant anything. As a matter of fact, I know it didn't to the Jews at the time. They didn't have the Julian or Gregorian calendar. It doesn't mean anything to them, but it does to us. And so maybe God intended this message to brighten the day of Christians who have been celebrating the 25th of December. And it turns out that not by coincidence, but by the power of God that the day was chosen. And we celebrate it just like the Magi did. They were the very first ones to bring presents to honor Christ on this day. I'm laughing, but it's freaked me out when I saw it because I was not expecting this. I thought it would happen in November maybe, I don't know what I expected, but this software does what it does. It's telling us.
This is my last slide, and I want to show that there is a significant number of barriers, if you will, to kind of discover this. The first being you couldn't animate the sky like this and check out months and weeks and years and maybe even centuries like we can today. There was a gentleman named Rick Larson who made the movie The Star of Bethlehem. He kind of guided me on this tour, although he admits he's not an astronomer, and he marveled at some sights he saw that I discovered are just pretty common. They happen over and over again, and that would not have been unique enough to bring the Magi at the right time. So that's why I went back and did this myself. And what you see in the commentary from Ian is how unique these different events are. The next issue is too many people just say, oh, it looks really hard. It must have been all miracles, when in fact Christ's life, his early life, is absent of miracles other than the virgin birth. So I think we have to recognize that God is allowing Christ to experience life as a human, and that's what makes him our advocate. Understanding the full context of Matthew, the rising, the enduring, that the stars don't point to a direction, they set timing and events. They can establish certain events occurring. The error in the Josephus manuscript that was copied, it was actually copied in the 1500s wrong and then propagated after that. And when Ernst Martin went back and looked, he saw the original manuscripts were translated to 1 BC, and all the early church fathers said that he was born in 2 BC. So not understanding that mistake. As I already mentioned, not understanding astronomy. You have to find occurrences that are unique enough that the Magi would not show up at the wrong time. Not trusting the inspired word. You can get deep into all this and have a hard time finding some of these images and give up and punt to the miracle again. Not using Revelation 12. Revelation 12 is the magic key. It's the key that unlocks it. The minute you see that event rising on September 11th, Virgo with the clothed in the sun, the moon at her feet. That is a pretty rare event. It occurs approximately every 22 years, and it really depends a little bit on whether it happens at sunup. But that event is rare enough that it pins down the date Jesus would have been born to a near window when Herod is still alive, and that it only occurs once in that window, and then all these other events makes it unique. Not understanding the inferred facts, like why didn't the Magi just go straight to Bethlehem and stop at the well and ask? And of course, this well is the well at Bethlehem, the one made famous by David when he longed for a drink there when the Philistines owned that space, and his mighty men went down and got him some water there, and he was just devastated. He poured the water out in honor of God because he wouldn't drink it. But that's the well of Bethlehem, the very same well that these Magi are going to head to. And instead they stop and do more stargazing. And then the final thing is many people, especially Christians, would fear offending God with astrology. Astrology's bad. That's the making these stars and images into idols, and we don't want to do that. And following your hunch, it's always you're always on a little shaky ground when you're trying to figure out what God didn't say or what didn't happen or what you don't have the prophecy for. And I just had to kind of hold that in my right hand while I searched with my left hand, and that I think allowed me to find. Now, moving to the last slide, I just want to point out, just maybe summarize, because this is taking a while. Jupiter is the star of Christ. It is his star, and that's because it does all the things that Matthew points out that his star did. It rises in the east, it endures long enough, it appears in the south of Jerusalem, and then it goes into retrograde motion and stops directly over Bethlehem. And some of the other pretty significant symbols is the Leo, the lion, rising with his star in its heart. That would bring up the image to somebody of Jesus being the Lion of Judah, which is Revelation 5:5. The sign of the Christian faith, the circumcision of the heart that I mentioned in the previous slide, that's Romans 2:29, and that is exactly what I thought when I saw this. It appears to be the Christian sign of the circumcision of the heart. It may not be. I'm just looking for symbolism here, just to say that the sum of all these symbols, some of them probably were part of the prophecy. Venus and Jupiter conjunction on June 17th in 2 BC. It would have become the brightest star, probably the brightest star ever, because Jupiter is the second brightest star and Venus is the brightest star. Whenever they came together, it would be the brightest star. Now, there's no Bible verse that requires it to be the brightest star. I think those are from our songs and Hallmark cards, but it certainly is that. And Venus is known to us as the mother planet. It was known to the Magi. It would have been called in their language the divine mother, and it's still a female. And then Jupiter in conjunction with it on June 17th, and then they come apart on June. Next time they see it would be June 18th. So somewhere around there is probably his birthday, the day of his birth. And that is probably when the angel appears to the shepherds. These events together are totally unique. The first two events are unique in Daniel to Jesus' time, but adding in the Venus-Jupiter conjunction, it makes it completely unique in time, in all time, as far as I can tell. I could not find another example of it inside of tens of thousands of years. So the Magi stop and wait outside of Jerusalem. That kind of is a symbol that that last part of Matthew is part of their sign, that it has to appear before them as they stand facing the south. It has to appear over them, and it does. It does it at 4:30 in the morning, and then they have to watch it just a few more days. It's going to come to a stop right over that city of Bethlehem. It's also interesting to note that Herod, when he's destroying the children, he chooses 2 years and under. and Jesus is really only 6 months old. I think this is because the question Herod asked the Magi, when did you first see the star? And they would have said the time period that represents September 11th, which should have been 14 months ago. And that's when Herod would have done his math and decided that any baby over or under 2 years old would be his target, which is extremely sad that he did that. And I think Jewish history, there are stories that his children turned against him, and he may have lost his throne and even been killed over that event. But I would like to think so. But I don't know if we have enough real, true historical data to say that. But I want to finish by saying this whole process was very amazing to me. Every time I found something, I just couldn't believe what I saw, and it was bigger than I was looking for. And that gave me a great amount of joy. And I hope that you've seen this and that you've gotten a little bit of excitement out of this, because what we're seeing here has not been seen in 2,000 years. And it is an amazing set of events that God put into motion when he created the universe. He didn't move these stars around, or they wouldn't be where we're seeing them using Kepler's laws. These stars went into these motions as just part of their normal behavior, and it all happened on these two dates, September 11th and June 17th. And they're totally unique in time when taken as a whole. So God, it appears, did announce the arrival of his son in a majestic way in the sky, using the natural order of the planets and the solar system, which just gives me goosebumps. So I hope you've enjoyed this. Thank you.